Shabbat Shalom. Thank you everyone for coming today to see my sermon. The summer is a great time to be able to daven together in the chapel and have guest Divrei Torah givers. So the cantor will be speaking this week. Next week will be Michael Kival, and we have Mitchell Solkowitz and a few other people that you know and love will be sharing some of their thoughts and commentary on the Torah portion. I think this is also my Ufrif Parsha because July 9th, right? So it was my Ufrif Parsha. So it'd be nice if my wife would have come, but anyway. Whatever, you could talk to her later, I don't know. We have kids, it's just, I don't know. Anyway. So this Devar is about leadership and separation, looking at the actions of Korach. So many of us are familiar with the infamous story of Korach, the rebel who tried to overthrow Moses and especially Aaron as leaders of the Israelite nation. You see, Moses' position was not under attack so much as his decision to appoint his brother Aaron to the priesthood, according to Rashi. Of course, this was not Moses' choice at all, but rather a fulfillment of God's will. Rashi, in quoting from Tanhuma, explains that Korach's rebellion was not one of impulse, but rather of careful planning. The parsha begins with the words, Vayikach Korach, a phrase that can be translated as, took himself to a different side, or let his heart lead him to deny God's justice, a reference that comes from Job. Korach gathers more than 250 elders along with Datan, Aviram, and On, so his scheme could not have happened on impulse. He very much meant to separate himself and his followers from the whole of Israel in openly challenging Moses' authority. His plea that, quote, we are all holy, kulam kedoshim, belies his public critique of Moses, which fractures the Israelite community rather than strengthening it. As we have seen, when Korach challenges Moses' appointment of Aaron, he is not challenging Moses' decision, but God's. Korach challenging Moses' claim on holiness while rejecting God's will is one proof that Korach's rebellion is not for the sake of heaven or to walk more closely with God, but rather a power grab born from deep-seated jealousy. Simply put, Moses has something Korach wants. Korach can't very well take it with force, so he claims to want holiness for the whole community, kulam kedoshim. But Korach is really challenging the religious and legal structure Moses has put in place through God's instruction to undermine and ultimately strip Moses and Aaron of authority. Onkelos, the well-known Talmudic commentator and translator, says that Korach set himself into a separate faction, the Et Paleg. I couldn't help but notice this word, Peleg, and I remember that in modern Hebrew it is used to describe or name a political party, a miflaga. It got me thinking, why would a person want to be in power? Is there ever a good reason? Yesterday, in conversation with some friends, one of whom works for the Democratic Party, I asked about a well-known political figure and their chances of running for president. My friend replied, oh, him? All he's ever wanted was to be president, and he'll say whatever he needs saying to achieve his goals. Not a particularly unusual review of anyone seeking the Oval Office, right? We are always suspicious of those who seek power, though, and this has been true since Moses' time. As Jews, we tend to prefer leaders who don't seek power. Moses is one of a host of Jewish biblical power brokers who did not seek the throne. Abraham was plucked from Ur in Lech Lecha. Joseph was sold to Egypt, and Moses was lured to the burning bush. Later on, King David, won power only after prevailing in an unfavorable match with the Philistine hero, Goliath. These figures' journeys did not involve the desire to rule, but rather the will to overcome, and separation helped them achieve this. Abraham was separated from his homeland, Joseph from his family, David from Jonathan in his home city, and Moses from his flock and the palace that he grew up in. Moses continued to practice separation many times throughout his time with the Israelites. When he received the Torah, when he ascended the mountain and watched the battle with Amalek as his arms went up and down with the battle, and before he died on Mount Nebo. Separation is important in developing a mindset for leadership. It can teach mindfulness, quiet the mind, and help open us to new ideas. Rabbi Harris is doing his best right now to practice a summer of separation, so please don't email him. So what's wrong with Korach's approach of separating himself with what he perceives as the corrupt and nepotistic institution of the kahuna, the priesthood? Simply put, he's separating from within rather than without. He seeks the implosion of the community's religious structure for his own benefit. In contrast, it can be healing and nurturing to separate from without. Sabbaticals, travels, and pilgrimages, like our ancestors took, were about serving community by practicing self-improvement. And self-improvement is usually focused on reducing one's sense of self-importance. Great leaders like Joseph, Moses, and Abraham are born of service because it is what all successful leaders have in common. They work for those who work for them. Korach's strategy was to rile people up by speaking lashon hara, evil speak, and promising his followers more importance and better visibility. He sought not to improve himself, but to bring down Moses. And what does Moses do when confronted with Korach's attack? He falls on his face in a subservient position. Why? Because he has not sought his position, and it is not his to keep. It is God's and the people's to give to him. I don't need to give you current examples of power-hungry figures. This is DC, after all. But we can all learn the lessons of holy and evil types of separation. As we continue to build our Bethel community, let's continue to find ways to serve one another. Shabbat Shalom.